zum Thema die jüdischen Wurzeln der Superhelden. Und wir haben jetzt zu Gast hier Howard Chaykin. Herzlich willkommen, Howard. Welcome, Howard. In der Ecke befindet sich ein Aufsteller der grünen Laterne, Green Lantern. Der Schöpfer von Green Lantern heißt Gil Kane. Und Gil Kane ist der Mentor von Howard Chaykin, bei dem ist er in die Lehre gegangen und hat dann angefangen, eine Karriere als Superheldenzeichner zu machen, hat so ziemlich alle Figuren, die es überhaupt gibt, Batman, Punisher, nennt einen, er hat ihn gezeichnet, alles umgesetzt und der wird uns sicherlich sehr, sehr viel erzählen können über die Geschichte der jüdischen Superhelden. Er hat so ziemlich alle Menschen kennengelernt, die in der Branche gearbeitet haben. Ja, und direkt neben mir sitzt Bill Morrison. Bill Morrison. Er hat mitgewirkt an der beliebten Zeichentrickserie The Simpsons, auch bei uns ein Riesenerfolg. Und er ist der Chef, der Kopf, das Brain hinter den Simpsons Comics beim Bongo Verlag. Zeitweilig waren die Simpsons Comics in Deutschland beliebter und erfolgreicher als in den USA. Also die Simpsons Comics gab es eine Weile nur, weil sie auch in Deutschland so erfolgreich waren. Mittlerweile hat sich das wieder etwas eingependelt und exklusiv zum Comic-Festival hat der Panini Verlag, der die beiden Herren in Deutschland verlegt, hat er einige Ausgaben rausgebracht, wo der Tod des Comic Book Guys zelebriert wird. Hier im Hintergrund, da läuft so eine Show, The Death of the Comic Book Guy. You make the variant covers of it.
I actually did only one of them.
Only one of them.
And then the others were my idea, but somebody else executed them.
Andere haben die zwar gezeigt.
So Howard and I were just laughing about it.
Yeah?
The fact that you're showing things that aren't even going to work.
Yeah, okay. Lucky you.
But it's an extension of your consciousness.
Yes.
Right?
Good one. Yeah. That's what we'll go with.
Shovel.
Ja, aber wie dem auch sei, diese Cover, die zelebrieren große Momente der Comic-Geschichte. You celebrate great moments of the comic superhero history.
Yes.
Original, it's pathetic, and by the Simpsons, in the Simpsons it's ironic, it's funny.
Well, one of the things about the comic book guy, I don't know how this relates to really what we're talking about tonight, but everybody at Bongo, we're all hardcore comic book fans. So whenever we do a story, especially with the comic book guy, we draw on all of that comic book knowledge, that useless knowledge that adults used to, chastise us for and make it pay off.
Ja, bei den Simpsons gibt es ja diesen Comic-Book-Guy, diesen Comic-Händler, den wandelnden Nerd. In the TV series, he's not a main character, I think. In some episodes you can see him and often not. In the comic he's much more important, I think. Oh?
Yeah, because we know the audience knows the character and relates to him more than the mainstream Simpsons audience. So we're able to sort of play him off.
Howard, you are also in The Simpsons, you always watch them?
No.
No? No? And you read the comics, which...
No.
Howard did a radioactive
I did a radioactive miniseries. I've only seen The Simpsons in reruns.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mess up. I'm a Family Guy fan. Because I love musical theater.
Yeah, he will sing.
I will sing. The guy who drove us into the airport today asked me whether I liked sports, and I said no. I like musical theater, and I absolutely love musical theater, and I love the fact that South Park and Family Guy, both of which are incredibly adolescent, insipid, childhood, boy, jock, locker room stuff, are both run by guys who love Rodgers and Hammerstein. and I love Rodgers and Hammerstein, and Rodgers and Hart, and Cole Porter, and Irving Berlin. Speaking of Jews in Germany.
Ja. Ich hatte das große Vergnügen, mit Howard in Erlangen einen Abend zu verbringen, und es war immer wieder großartig, wie der mitten im Satz anfing zu singen, und ich hoffe, dass wir das auch noch etwas heute vermitteln können. Aber wir haben natürlich auch ein sehr, sehr ernstes Thema hier. There are some serious things we have to talk about the Jewish roots in the superhero business. And you said you are one of the last, or you are the last Jew in the Superman.
I'm sort of the last draftsman. There aren't a lot of artists. There are a lot of comic book writers who are Jewish. But comics was a Jewish business, both in the publishing end and the talent end, because comics always drew a talent pool from the lower classes. And there was no real middle wave. I mean, even the guys who did ECs were guys who were World War II veterans, and then in the middle generation, there was no one but Neil Adams and Jim Steranko. And then the new guys came in, and they were all white trash from Baltimore and Virginia and the South. Very few of them with academic backgrounds. And the great shock to me is that there was never a huge black introduction of comics talent, because there's so much of a part of the American audience is the black readership. But I worked for Gil Kane. I met Gil Kane when I was 13 years old. And I recognized that comics was a great assimilative tool. Yeah. I saw the new Woody Allen movie last week, Midnight in Paris, in which case Owen Wilson, who was profoundly Gentile, plays the Woody Allen clown in the movie.
But it's a completely new movie. Or?
Yes.
We had no chance to see it in German.
Well, in the words of Neil Simon, it's think Yiddish, go British. And comics is very much about think Yiddish, go British. Jewish guys in the 1930s did not have names like Bruce or Clark. They were Jules and Shmuel. And I was taught about the Judaica of comics working for Gil Kane, who, as opposed to the photograph that we saw here, it'll come back.
Yeah, it'll come back.
Gil, when Gil was in his 20s, as a boy, he had a nose like a toucan. He looked like Yud Sus.
Is it really true?
Yes.
Yeah,
oh yes. Oh my God. He had a nose that would cast a shadow on a necktie. and he transformed himself in his early 20s. And with a nose job, he always had his hair went white when he was very young, and black eyebrows. And the minute the transformation was complete, the minute he'd gone from being the shtetl-dwelling ghetto boy who'd escaped Latvia when he was 4 years old and come to New York, he became incredibly conscious of anti-Semitism. And he gave, when I was working for him, gave me lists of all the anti-Semites in comics. Watch out for these guys, everyone. All newspaper people, never comic book people. Yeah. And so the comics is deeply steeped for me in the Yiddishness of my life.
But Gil Kane is the second generation of superhero authors.
Hardly. Gil was out there. Gil was doing it when he was 14 years old.
Yeah.
Gil and Carmine and Joe Kubert, Alex Toth, Frank Giacoya, one Hungarian, a bunch of Italian. Yeah, because all the good guys were getting killed in the war with you guys.
But he was well known for his start of Green Lantern.
Yeah, but he also
started the Silver Age.
He was a veteran, right?
But he was doing Shield. But he did Shield and Dusty in 1944. He was working for Pep Comics in 1944. He was drafted in 1944 when he was 17 years old. He came back in the late 1940s. During the war, comics were drawn by 13 and 14-year-old Jewish boys. That's who was doing comics. Joe Kubert was doing Hawkman when he was 14. Carmine Infantino was 15 when he was doing the Black Canary. Alex Toth was drawing the All-Star comics, Justice Society of America, when he was 16 years old. They were children. That's why the work was so shitty. It was the work of boys. But in their boyishness, their superegos were coming through, and all of that rampant rage, that childhood angst, that childhood fear came through in the work, and it defined the work, and it invented the language. Guys like Eisner was older, and Eisner took and codified that language. Eisner was also a Galician, as opposed to a Litvak. And these guys invented the language we tell. Everything we do today is informed by the work those guys did when they were 14, 15, and 16. And I'm very much a child of those men, in every way. I consider myself the link between that generation and my own. And I take that very seriously. I'm not interested in a lot of the things that my colleagues and my peers are interested in. I still share the beliefs and ideals of the work of the guys who preceded me. like Joe Kubert, like Gil Kane, like Alex Stowe, like Arno Patino, like Frank Giacoia. So.
Is it in the comic business a little bit like in the movie business we talk about with Bill Morrison? It's many people, many Jewish people goes into the movie business, gets great entertainer. What's the reason why so many?
Because Jews couldn't own property. The United States was a Christian country. Jews were not allowed to own farms. They were not allowed to own property in terms of acreage. They became merchants and they became sellers because that's what they could do. The movie business, the entertainment business derives itself from the fact that these guys made money selling gloves, selling furs, selling metal, selling diamonds, selling shares, and they translated that money into the next step, which was theaters. And when they had the theaters, they realized they could do better movies than were being shown in the movies. Thomas Edison was a raving anti-Semite who objected strenuously to the Jews who ran the movie business. One of the reasons that the movies left New York and made it to California was to get one step ahead of the patent attorneys who represented Thomas Edison. So the story of the Jews in the entertainment business in the United States is defined by being one step ahead of the law.
Yeah, but it sounds to be more fun to work into the entertainment
business.
No, not really.
I love being a Jew.
I think also a part of that is that a lot of immigrants growing up in New York had to create their own entertainment because they were shut out of the mainstream.
Yeah, but
so they had to create the Yiddish theater.
But it wasn't the Italians who did it.
Yeah.
It wasn't the Irish who did it.
Right.
And it wasn't the Germans who did it. It was the Jews.
Yeah.
And I think that comes out of the itinerant nature of Judaica. I think it comes out of the statelessness of Judaica. I think that, there was a huge German community in the United States. There was a flourishing Italian community, a flourishing Irish community. And I think the fact that the outsider nature of the religion and the statelessness of the people contributed to that fact.
Yeah.
I think it applies to comics, it applies to publishing, and it applies to the movie business.
Yeah, most of the Jewish kids who got into comics wanted to be illustrators or have a successful newspaper comic strip. And they really couldn't do that except for rare occasions like El Cap.
Because they weren't very good.
Yeah, so they got, but also I don't think they had they had to take care of their families, their fathers were at war.
Yeah, but the newspaper guys also sold the comic book guys down the river.
Yeah.
In the Keith Albert Commission, in the early 1950s, there was a commission that was blaming comics for juvenile delinquency. And the newspaper guys came up, Milton Caniff, and testified against comic books, that these things are just shit. They're crap. They're garbage. And in the subtext of that was, this is shit and garbage produced by Jews. Seriously, that's not a joke. That's quite serious. And it's the same as, I was a rock and roll fan. And I grew up listening to rock and roll as a kid. And you listen to Pat Boone singing Shaboom. Get a job, okay. And there's a great resonance between comic books and rock and roll. Because it's an outlaw culture. It's a culture created by its fans. Nobody gets up in the morning one day and says, I think I'll draw comics. You start out as a little boy, you see this shit, and you say, I want to do this, even though I suck. And I want to keep doing it until I do it right. It is a calling. It's like the priesthood. It's not something that occurs to one as an adult. It is in your genes. You have to do it.
Yeah. It doesn't pay well enough to yeah, so certainly there must be a love component.
Oh, without the love there's no point.
Yeah, right.
But did the Jewish artists or the Jewish comic book guys, did they put something special Jewish inside the comics and the stories? Is there something special Jewish inside? Or did they just give the people what they think that they need?
No, I think there was definitely a wish fulfillment. They wanted to be heroes. They wanted to be the big, strong.
They wanted to be British.
Look,
Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster wanted to be Clark Kent.
Yeah.
But Clark Kent is
they wanted to look that way.
But Clark Kent is not
Bruce Wayne. Not Jules Pfeiffer. Jules Feiffer is notorious for saying that Superman did not come from planet Krypton, he came from planet Poland. And so much of the immigrant experience is defined by that comic bookness, by what Superman went through. That mythic origin story. It's a little bit of Moses, it's a little bit of Jesus, it's also a little bit of taking the boat from Bremerhaven and making it to Ellis Island. It's a big deal. Because most of these guys were, Gil Kane was born in Latvia. He came to the United States 4 days before the crash of the stock market. The streets of gold went away really fast. Carmen Infantino, all these guys. They were kids. They were totally unprepared. They were hoodlums. Okay? And they were products of the New York streets. Jack Kirby is so much a product of New York. Okay? And the nature of the immigrant experience in the United States, in particular in New York City, defines what comics were about. These Jewish guys putting on the masks of Gentiles, being perceived as the ruling class, even though they're outsiders. Clark Kent's great secret, she doesn't know, that under these glasses, I'm the man she loves, but she mistreats me like this. It's like every Jewish geek kid that I grew up with, If only she knew who I really was.
You think Clark Kent is Jewish and Superman is not Jewish?
No, I think Superman is the guy that is the apotheosis. I'm sorry, the absolute epitome of what every Jewish guy wants to be perceived as. And in those days, you had a couple of baseball players, you had a couple of football players, and a couple of actors who were secretly Jewish. When I was a kid, we played the game of Is he Jewish? Is he Jewish? We found out Kirk Douglas was Jewish, everything was great. Jerry Lewis, not so much.
Dean Martin, by the way, another famous nose job.
No shit. Actually, I've seen the
yeah.
Will Jordan showed up at lunch with a book of old guys before the nose jobs.
Yeah.
And Dean Martin with his original nose. He's in Jersey and the nose is in Cleveland. It's amazing. Dino Crochet.
Yes.
Is it really true? Or is it a Pinocchio story? These nose stories?
Oh no, they're big noses. They're very big.
Yeah. They correct really that?
I have no idea. I mean, look. I'm assuming I'm Litvak. My people are from Russia and Poland. And I'm a bastard, as I said earlier. I don't know who my father was. I'm adopted. And the guy I thought was my father is not my father, so it's a good thing. And my real name is Drucker, not like Mort. But I'm both a Jew and a Jew bastard, as it works out perfectly. So, what cliches? I'm assuming they were raised by Cossacks in my biology. It all works out.
You mostly work into the superhero.
Where were you?
Russian. Polish.
Huh?
Yeah. But also German and English.
Yeah, my ancestors, my grandparents all believed the German Jews got what was coming to them.
But Bill,
seriously.
Bill, you
Because they were so mistreated by the German Jews.
And Bill, you start very lately to search your Jewish roots. Is that true?
Yes, I was raised Christian.
What denomination?
Presbyterian. Yeah, Cumberland Presbyterian. And didn't find out until I was in my 30s that I was Jewish on my mother's side. And the moment I found out, I got very curious about my Jewish ancestry and wanted to find out more about it. And unfortunately, my family didn't keep very good records. So I know that my great-grandmother on my mother's side, her name was Camille Kaliska, and she was from Poland. And the way I found out that I was Jewish was I went to a doctor who was not my family doctor, specialist, and he reminded me so much of my Uncle Marvin. That should have been a clue, right? My Uncle Marvin. And this is my mom's uncle, so he was my great uncle. And I couldn't get it out of my head that this Jewish doctor was so much like my uncle. And my mother had just passed away, so I called my dad and I said, this is gonna sound like a really strange question, but is there any chance that there's Jewish ancestry on mom's side of the family? And he said, yeah, when your mom and I started dating, she mentioned that her grandmother was Hebrew. And I'm like, Dad, I'm in my 30s. You didn't think that was something that I'd be interested to know, you know, at some point between my birth and now?
Yeah, I only found out I was illegitimate about 6 months after my mother died.
Wow.
It's a bad secret to her grave.
Wow.
A lot of guilt.
How did you find out?
A cousin of mine on my father's side who I'd not seen in 40 years. Everybody assumed I knew. So, yeah. The generation before us was so obviously terrified and shamed by their behaviors.
Yeah.
We had no shame whatsoever. I mean, we were post-dignity.
And did it change very much in you when you knew that you?
Oh yeah, there was something inside of me that just that knowledge just sort of made something click, and it just sort of ignited a spark of a desire to learn now, you know, to learn about Jewishness and my ancestry, and so yeah, I really took to it.
Yeah. Did you convert to the Jewish?
Well, I'm kind of an anachronism, because I didn't change my beliefs about the Messiah, because I didn't feel like I was it's weird. There's a movement called.
Christian?
No, I'm a Messianic Jew.
Oh.
And a lot of people think that's Jews for Jesus, but Jews for Jesus actually converts Jews to Christianity, and Messianic Judaism says that Jews can still be Jews and also believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So we still follow all the holidays, and we, you know, all of our services. We have a Torah service, and everything is, you know, if you go.
But Yeshua is the Mashiach.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where I'm at. But what that means is, I look at everything. I look at my faith in, we call him Yeshua instead of Jesus, because that was his Hebrew name. But I look at my faith from a different perspective. So I didn't really change what I believe, but now I see the Jewishness of that faith, and I look at his early disciples, who were mostly Jews.
Well, they had to be, because nobody else could read.
Yeah. And they still followed the Torah, and they still observed all the holidays, and you know, they were still very, very Jewish. It wasn't until later that everything changed, when the message was brought to non-Jews. Then, you know, things started changing. But in the early days of what we think of as Christianity, which really wasn't Christianity, it was very, very Jewish.
You are something like both. Christian and Jew. I think it can work.
Yeah, somewhere in between. But I see myself as mostly Jewish. I really see myself as Jewish, although if I talk to most Jews, they don't see me as Jewish, and if I talk to most Christians, they don't see me as Christian.
Okay.
So,
what are you very?
I'm sort of an orphan, a religious orphan.